And we're live. Ladyada, what is this?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Ask a Altium marketing person engineer.
Yeah.
We're here at the Adafruit factory as normal for a special live broadcast. Coming to you from the factory, me, Ladyada, with me, Mr. Ladyada, and our special guest today,
Ted.
Ted.
Ted, who are you and where are you from?
Well, I'm Ted Pawela. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Altium. So that it's like a big fancy title for saying that I'm responsible for what we say and in some ways what we do. And we're here in our headquarters here in La Jolla, California.
Okay. Well, we're going to jump right in. The community asked a bunch of questions. We had a lot of questions. Before we get started, maybe tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I actually come from more of a MCAD, MCAE background by my work history. I started out as an ocean engineer many years ago and worked in industry for about a dozen years, and then got recruited by a software company, ANSYS, that makes finite element analysis. I worked in a number of those kinds of companies, ANSYS, Marc Analysis Research Corporation, MSC.Software, sort of the Nastran folks. I worked most recently for Dassault, and then in November, I had the good fortune of being able to join Altium.
Wow. And have you ever done PCB design or just mostly mechanical design?
You know what? I've actually done a little bit of both. So it's the interesting part about being an ocean engineer is that you're kind of blending disciplines, and so I worked on underwater acoustic devices, and of course those have PCBs in them, and as well as mechanical devices. And it's sort of they're interesting because they marry electro and mechanical together to transform electrical energy into acoustic energy.
Well, before we jump in, of course, I'm intrigued by any type of ocean engineering. Do you have to worry about like salt water and like all sorts of things that you normally don't have to worry about if you're doing land engineering?
Yeah, you do actually. So this is great that I get to answer some of these questions because nobody
you didn't expect this.
Nobody ever asked me these questions. But
tell me about dolphins.
But yeah, you actually do. So corrosion is like a huge design factor that you have to take into account, and of course you have pressure and wave loading and things like that. So it's kind of like I said, a specialty, multidiscipline engineering field.
Are there ever I'm just like curious, like if you're ever doing ocean engineering, like above ground there's RF that comes from power lines and just like devices and the sun. Underwater, is there like weird electrical noise that you have to deal with? Like what are sources of like problems? Is it like, do you know what I mean? Like, is there something in the ocean that like ever causes electrical RF issues?
Yeah, definitely you see actually when you have even things like geothermal vents and things like that affect things. Definitely the same things you would see out in the environment, sunspots and solar activity, things like that. And a lot of the devices that we use use electromagnetics as well as, so it's like there's side scan sonars, but there's also electromagnetic sensing and mapping devices for seafloor and things like that. So it's definitely an issue to contend with.
Okay.
Well, do you have a favorite ocean before we move on to about CAD software?
Your favorite ocean?
Yeah, well, I'm here in La Jolla, so Pacific Ocean is definitely West Coast, Best
Pacific
Coast.
Ocean, the peaceful ocean. Okay,
right,
well that's always fun to see. Like what it's always great to hear about people's background because you can tell that you have a great love of that engineering. I think you miss it a little bit.
Oh, I miss it. Actually, it's one of the reasons why I'm here at Altium. Actually, I in many ways, Altium's a little bit different than some of the companies that I worked for previously. But what I really like about it, and actually the thing that drew me to Altium was this deep connection to the engineers, and actually to the individual engineers. And so I actually identify with that a lot, and it's like I said, it's core to what Altium stands for.
Okay, sweet.
What's great is you were preparing for the next generation of engineers because we're all going to be making things for that Mars trip. So if you thought underwater was tough, wait till you get to space.
A whole new environment, but it's all air, space, whatever. It's all fluids.
Okay, well let's dive right in. I think we took care of the first one. Why do you join Altium? Give us a brief background of the company.
Yeah, Altium. What's their story?
Yeah, so Altium, it's interesting. A lot of people around here like to call Altium a 30-year-old startup. It's a little over 30 years old actually, and it was built on the premise of doing PCB design software. And we also went into a period where we started thinking about the Internet of Things and started to build hardware. We actually founded in Australia. That's where the company started. When we got into hardware, moved the headquarters to Shanghai in China, thinking that that's where a lot of manufacturing would take place. And ultimately, in 2012, we kind of came back to our roots and said, we're a software company, let's do that well and be close to the markets that are most important for us. And so, moved over here to La Jolla, where we've been since. There's a lot of innovation. I've got a little cheat sheet in front of me to be in full disclosure here, but Altium has introduced a lot of things first, even that people don't think about, like rigid flex, like being the first company to have a PC-based circuit board, PCB design software, and of course about CircuitMaker and Circuit Studio and all of that, and there's great capabilities inside of Altium Designer as well that we can talk about more. But there's some really unique things there. But again, 30 years old, lots of innovation, lots of change, but in my opinion, a great company.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of your favorite features. Since you mentioned that you're in the U.S., can you talk about what's some of the bigger markets for Altium? Like, where do you have the most licenses and seats, or whatever you call them?
Yeah. So definitely the U.S. is the or I should say North America. North America is the #1 market for us. Europe is the second biggest, and Asia is still is a solid market for us. It's not split exactly in thirds, but it kind of goes down those lines. It's not a huge imbalance in any one particular region, but definitely the U.S. would be the biggest of those today.
Okay. And where's the growth market?
Well, we see growth markets in a lot of I have to say, I think the Internet of Things is changing things a lot, right? I mean, we have growth markets in the U.S. of just different industries that used to be very mechanically focused, and you see companies today that previously wouldn't have ever designed a printed circuit board or embedded software or anything like that, and they all do today because everything, smart devices are everywhere all around us. So in that sense, that's a global growth opportunity. But we do see that there are, specific places, like we see in Vietnam, there's a lot of growth. We see in Latin America, there's a lot of growth for us. China obviously has a lot of growth as well.
Okay, yeah, we have an entire Internet of Things product line ourselves, and it's one of our bigger product lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, I have some questions. So, my question is, there's a lot of CAD companies in this space. What is like the Altium philosophy? Like, what is the thing that you do well that you think sets you apart? And as like a side question, if I was going to interview your competitors, what would they say is the strength of Altium?
Well, I think our competitors, I know some people who work at some of our competitors, and I've asked them about Altium. In fact, even before I joined Altium, I asked them about it. And I think that there's a sense that Altium is good at marketing. I wish I could claim credit for that because I have only been here for a relatively short time. But a lot of people think Altium is really good at marketing. But I think what we're really good at is connecting with our users. And so, maybe I'll put that in the form of a story. When I first came here, I had the opportunity to meet with some of the board members here. And specifically, there's a gentleman on our board. His name is David Warren. And I asked him a little bit about, tell me, I knew he was one of the original founders along with Nick Martin. And I asked him to tell me a little bit about that history. And what he told me was a story about how he and Nick worked together on projects as entrepreneurs, basically. And they were sitting in front of drafting boards and light boxes trying to do PCB layout. And while the PCB design tools, in terms of software existed, they were on mainframes and high-end workstations. And, their view was, gosh, there has to be some way that the rest of us can do PCB design and use software to make that more efficiently. And so that was the foundation of the company. They built that, and they built the first version of our software called Protel in order to, to make technology accessible to themselves and others who didn't have access to the high end. And I think that's, at its core, that's the philosophy of Altium, to kind of level the playing field for people, to make technology, advanced technology, available to everyone, and really to kind of empower the individual to create. That's why I'm here, because I really identify with that philosophy, and I think it makes us different than most other software companies.
And you guys have 3 different offerings right now. You have CircuitMaker, Circuit Studio, and then Altium Designer.
Great.
So what are those 4? I mean, briefly tell us what are those 4, and are you planning to continue to have 3 different offerings? Are you going to merge them, or are they going to deprecate some? What's the future of this 3-pronged software approach?
Right. Actually, thank you for asking that, because I think I hear a lot of confusion, like when I look at user forums and things like that around, what's our strategy there. And in fact, I'll give you guys a little scoop in that we're going to introduce a 4th product, not too far away from now, right, coming this spring. And so the direct answer is that we plan to persist those products indefinitely. There's a future for all of them. They're each targeted at a different kind of user. So CircuitMaker is really, literally, as the name suggests, it's intended for the maker community. It's free, as you know. It's pretty powerful. We think it's the best thing that there is out there for for makers in terms of high-end capability. Circuit Studio is for the professional, but it's a pretty affordable price point at $9.95, and actually right now you can buy it for $4.95. There's a promotion going on. Shameless plug there. And then Altium, and so Circuit Studio is intended for that professional, but for the advanced professional, we have Altium Designer. And then the new product that we'll introduce in the springtime is called the Tina. It's really intended for teams, people who have to work concurrently on multi-board design system or multi-board systems. And so we see a specific place for each of those. They're all built on the same technology foundation underneath. And so we absolutely plan to persist them, to continue to develop them, enhance them, and kind of go forward with all of them.
And are these software, you buy them once, or are they like subscription service? What's the model that Altium has?
Yeah, so our model allows you to do either. You can subscribe and use them in that way on an annual subscription basis, or you can buy them perpetually. And again, in full disclosure, I would say that Athena, the one that I mentioned for the future, the intent there is that'll be a subscription-based product for some technology reasons that we can talk about another time. But really for Circuit Studio, for CircuitMaker, for Altium Designer, any of those you can either subscribe or you can purchase outright.
Okay.
All right,
Cross-platform?
I'm sorry?
Cross-platform?
Those are focused on Windows platforms for now. So we're actually having a lot of discussion surrounding OS X, Mac OS, and couldn't make a firm commitment today or anything, but we recognize, especially at the within the makers side of the market, that there's a lot of people who work on Macs, and we'd like to support that as well. For today, it's all Windows.
Okay.
Okay, next up. Is there anything that Altium products can do that no other PCB software does?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would highlight. One is that we were first to market with true 3D, and when I say 3D, I mean kind of natively being able to work with 3D design files and be able to understand how the PCB board, all of its components and everything else will mate with mechanical enclosures. So I've talked to a whole lot of customers who have told me that in the beginning, when they first saw 3D, they thought it was a little bit of a party trick, that it looked cool, but do you really need this? But then they told me stories about going into design review meetings where they had a board in one hand and the first intended enclosure in the other, and find out in a design review meeting that they don't mate up, right? And so at that point, you kind of realize quickly why 3D is so important. And our 3D still allows you to kind of render the PCB real time with the same database that you use for electrical layout. So we think we're still superior in that sense. And I would also highlight, there's a number of things, being able to do, we talk about a unified design platform, and where we see that as being really important is marrying up capabilities for documentation with what you do in design, so that if you create a design, you can automatically create the release documentation associated with that. But you can also change things in the documentation and it's reflected back in the design. So when we talk about unified platform, we talk about those kind of capabilities. And I would say those things are really core Altium capabilities that are differentiators.
Okay, no, that's good. I do like the 3D capabilities. I mean, I 3D model my boards. I find it helps me find all sorts of mistakes with connectors and stuff. Another thing another question that came up was, how does Altium help avoid common PCB design mistakes? I mean, this is, it's a big problem for PCB designers. A mistake can cost you weeks and hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars. If your PCB software can help you, that's great. What do you guys do to help the designer?
Yeah, so we have what you would expect. We have electrical rule checks. We have design rule checks. Utilities that allow us to do that kind of checking, and where you can look for error conditions that are electrical in nature, connectivity, schematic, basic manufacturing checks, those kinds of things. I would say, though, maybe the key thing is when I was talking about how documentation and design kind of come together. So, you're able to propagate and document design changes bidirectionally between your documentation package and between your design files and your schematic sheets. And that, I think, is a key way that we keep those things synced up and avoid a lot of mistakes.
Want to take the next question?
Yeah, keep going.
Oh, me? Okay, fine. Okay, so some makers in the Adafruit community, and we have a lot of makers, and the maker community is pretty wide-ranging. There's people who are beginning with their first design, all the way to people who are making their own laptops. And a lot of people wondered, there hasn't been historically a lot of collaboration with Altium in the maker community, which has been around for 10 years. Is this something you guys are interested in? Are you going to be spending more time with the maker community? How do you see this community and how Altium can help it?
Yeah, so it was actually only in June of 2015 that we launched CircuitMaker. So that we're coming around to kind of the 2-year mark. So we don't necessarily have the long history with that product, but in that period of time, we now have, I think it's on the order of 100,000 subscribers. In any given day, there's somewhere between 10 and 20,000 of them who are actively working on design files. So we feel like with CircuitMaker that we are we're participating in that community, that we're also contributing to that community, and like I said, I mean, we have a commitment to persist that, to move that forward, and continue to add new capabilities to support the makers market. And even as a commercial company, we feel like our way of our version of corporate social responsibility isn't out to the general community, it's to the engineering community. And so, makers, students, every element of the market, from makers all the way to high-end professionals, we feel like that's the place where we have a contribution to make, to kind of push technology forward. And like I said, level the playing field for people who don't have the resources of a big company, for people who don't have necessarily, high-end skills. We want to really empower people who want to make things, who want to be creators, to do that.
Okay. Next question. We have so many questions. So it's no secret that Autodesk recently acquired Eagle, makers of CADsoft, makers of Eagle CAD, which a lot of people in the maker community have used, and they moved from a purchasing model to a subscription model. And this is something that I think some people in the community really like, because they're like, well, I don't have to keep paying for upgrades. Some people don't like it. They don't like subscription software. At the same time, Altium is starting to run some promotions and discounts on software. So why do you think, here's your time, you're pitching to the Eagle users who are watching, why should they take a look at Altium? Because it is a pretty big deal to change your CAD software. Why is the investment worth it?
Yeah, it is a big deal. And I guess, I definitely want to say that we have a healthy respect for Eagle, and and in particular, we think that there's a really strong community there. And you're right, it's really difficult, that cost of change, not from the, what do you pay for the software, but what does it take to switch your design files over and to learn a new tool and so forth. It's not insignificant. So, I guess if I just put it simply, we think we have a better tool. We think we have a better tool at the free level. I think we have a better tool at the, at the paid level with Circuit Studio. And as I said, I mean, our remit, really, our focus is on supporting engineers. So we just want to make it easy for you to work with us, for whether, you're a maker, you're a professional, whatever. We want to be a company that's easy to work with. We want to provide you with outstanding technology, and, and we want to be open with you about everything from our roadmaps to our business model and everything else. And so, we hope that people do continue to look at Circuit Studio. We've had a big sort of bump in terms of, people coming to look over, and it's certainly been helped by the fact that we've had promotional pricing, but I think it's also helped us by the fact that we still offer paid up licenses for those who want them. So so it's really, it's that simple, right? We want to work with you, and we want to give you the best technology we can.
I actually haven't used Altium tools, so I'm going to ask some questions that might be obvious to Altium users, but I personally am curious. So with EagleCAD, you would start with like the hobbyist license. You could get like a hobbyist license for non-commercial use, and then it was the same tool as the professional. It was just smaller. So you get your file, as you upgraded, your file still worked because you just got more space and more layers. Is that the same system that works with the different tools with Altium, or are they different file formats? Can you open your CircuitMaker in, Altium, or your ProTel in Circuit Studio? What's the connection file style?
Right. So there are some differences there, but we offer, we have importers for everything. So effectively, you can take something you created in CircuitMaker, you could bring it into Circuit Studio, you could bring that into Altium Designer. It's not exactly the same native file format in every case, but you can bring everything in without loss, so that you can continue to work with that. So it's a little bit different than having, sort of the, almost like a freemium model where you can go from the same version of a product that's free to you pay a little bit to you pay more. So it's slightly different than that, but you still have the same capability to move those designs fully up and down the sort of the chain. And part of the reason why it's different is that we do think that there's differences in the way people work. And so specifically, if I talk about CircuitMaker, and I think there was actually, ahead of time a question posted about CircuitMaker and why we make design files. Why do you have to be connected to the internet, or why are files not stored locally and so forth? And this is related, right? And to this question, I think, and that is that we really think that the makers community is all about open source hardware. It's a philosophy, I think, that we agree with and we want to support. And so it's about sharing. It's about sharing content in terms of design files and everything else. And so we designed CircuitMaker to do that, to make that a community experience, to make that so that sharing was native to it, and support a way of working that we think is very much the way things are going to be in the future, especially as more kids come out of college and they're they think differently about sharing than probably I did when I came out of college, and so there's a philosophical reason for those kinds of differences.
Okay, we have a very specific question now for Circuit Studio, which is the direct competition to Eagle Ultimate. The question would be, how does the maintenance premium version compare with Eagle's software as a service version? I think they're asking maybe layer for layer, PCB size by PCB size, the functional capabilities. How do you compare the two?
Sure. So off the top of my head, I'm pretty certain that there's a couple of functional differences that I'm aware of. One is that within Circuit Studio, it was Circuit Studio, right? Not Altium Designer we're talking about. Circuit Studio allows you to have 16 signal layers, 32 plane layers. Eagle, I think, is 16 and 16. We have, I talked about 3D and why that's important. We have this dynamic 3D, again, connecting, your design file to 3D, whereas Eagle renders things into 3D view. It's a more limited capability. Our routing, as I understand it from talking to people who have used both, I've heard that we have some advantages in terms of the routing capability. And, and I would say in general, one of the things we hear a lot about Eagle is that people ask us questions about, scripting, for example, and that's a powerful capability in Eagle. And yet one of the things that we've noted is that a lot of the things that people use scripting for are capabilities that we've built in native into Circuit Studio. So, we think that we're more than competitive in terms of that, capability by capability. And then, maybe the thing that's most temporal or most interesting right now is the difference in the license model, of course.
And then we also had a good follow-up question, which is, how can makers or customers of Altium participate in giving feedback, suggestions, or just asking more questions about this? If they have, some people are watching live, they want to give you feedback, or they want to know more, where do they go?
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, we've got plenty of places where you can do that from. Anybody can sign up for an Altium Live account and then post to our communities where we take product feedback, and have a lot of community engagement, user to user, being able to interact, but it also all comes to us as well. We got, Altium has a Facebook page that you can go to, you can post and comment and so forth there. Same thing on LinkedIn. You can always contact us in those ways, and also we have contact us forms on the web. You can call us. So anybody, I'm happy to to field questions or at least distribute them to the right people myself as well. So there's a variety of ways that people can get in touch with us on that. And by the way, same thing on CircuitMaker. It's got its own dedicated sort of forum. So you can go to that community, download the product or not. You can participate there and give us feedback in that way.
Okay.
Okay. I'll add one to the list.
Yeah.
So we have Snapchat, and say hello, Ted. We're on Snapchat at AdaBot. So
hello, Ted.
Yeah. we have like 2 or 3 more suggestions and some questions that other people wrote in. If you don't mind, if you have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we answered. I think that your number one. I mean, some people ask, what's your favorite feature? But I think the 3D stuff. You've convinced me you like the 3D
Bunny
stuff.
like that feature.
Bunny like that feature. Here's some ideas. A citywide site license for a hackerspace. So, people can go to a hackerspace and they can check out a copy and just use it while they're there. It's a good way for people to try out. Like, it's basically a seat license for a hackerspace. That sounds pretty cool. Or a library. Libraries have 3D printers and circuit cutters. We had a couple people who said that they found that cloud-based board design is limiting. They're using the cloud. I guess CircuitMaker uses cloud-based. They said it's a challenge for them. Some people don't have very good internet.
But they go on airplanes a lot.
They go on airplanes. They're traveling, but it's true. Like, some people don't have broadband at home, or they don't have very good connections, or they're at school and maybe it's hard for them to get out to the internet. So, something that you might want to think about. Suggestion: pay only if you successfully crowdfund your project license. So maybe it's a bit of a financing contribution deal. I thought that was kind of interesting. So people who wanted to work on a crowdfunding campaign, they wanted to build a prototype. It's not commercialized yet, maybe, so they would be able to use the tools to create their prototype, and then once they commercialize it, they would upgrade their license. And then here's some more questions. So how do you see the role of open source tools like KiCad and Gita? I know you probably don't think of them as a threat, but do you ever think of collaborating with them? Is there any things that you guys have learned from looking at or using these open source tools?
I mean, certainly we've learned things from, we learn things from all of our competitors. I think when you look at, KiCad and other open source tools, ease of use is probably the most important thing. And, making tools that are accessible for people who don't necessarily have the same, for people who have sort of less experience and so forth, I think is important. And I think I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe we don't always learn that from competitors and open source tools and so forth. But I think, you know, the whole movement of open source is you know, teaching us to make things more accessible. Maybe that's the #1 lesson. And when I say accessible, I mean, you know, we want to give access to the technology and, like I said, level the playing field. But we also want to make it really easy to use. And you know, I think the other thing is that, you know, people, there's new ways of working. I mean, a lot of the tools that we have today, I think, are largely, they were created trying to replicate the way that we did things in the past, right? I talked about our board members sitting in front of a drafting table or on a light box, and you still see kind of the artifacts of that way of working in some of the PCB design tools that we do on the computer today. And some of the things in there, you know, if you're 18 years old and you're going into college and you touch one of those tools for the first time and start seeing how you do layout and schematic, you would probably look at that and say there's certain things that aren't intuitive. They don't necessarily make, you know, a tremendous amount of, I don't know, logical sense, right? But they're artifacts. And so I think over time, you know, we're learning that we need to think about that next generation of engineers and creators who are coming into the space and make things more accessible to them in that way, work in more logical ways. And, you know, with respect to the comments that you said, I guess, you know, I just want to say I really like a lot of those ideas. So, you know, Altium, you know, we're working on a startup program. So there's startup discounts available for people on all of our products. We're open to ideas to make that more accessible. Those are really cool and creative ideas in terms of, you know, kind of the library approach, or you know, supporting people who have a Kickstarter project. And so, you know, I would love to hear more about that, and definitely encourage people to, you know, to speak with us directly about, you know, how those models could be implemented. I think they're great ideas. Love to support them. You know, I think it's really cool that we're thinking outside of the box.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is like pretty intense.
Yeah, and well, I'm glad that we got a chance to give the community a voice who were able to give this to you directly. So when they asked, did you ask our question? We can say, sure. So we got a couple more,
Okay.
and then we're almost done.
You got some more. You're doing so good. Congratulations,
Yeah, good work,
Ted.
Ted.
You're like, it's like a marathon. It's not a sprint.
No worries.
We got a double question about CircuitMaker. So Dave asks, can you share the user numbers for CircuitMaker? I guess registrations, maybe daily users. And then also they asked, why did you backtrack from the like cheap paid rental model for CircuitMaker that was in beta a few years back? Like, I guess you could get the program for free and then you'd rent different capabilities. I don't know if you weren't around for this, but I guess you could rent different capabilities, maybe more layers. The other person thought it would have been a really big success, but instead they went for free, and then, which is great for users because everything's free, but maybe it's like not having a way for people to pay for things, and maybe more advanced capabilities weren't added in. So it's kind of maybe like if you know anything about the history of CircuitMaker and why they decided to go that way, and then how many people are using it about.
Yeah, so there's about 100,000 subscribers to CircuitMaker, or 100, you know, over 100,000 have downloaded the software. They participate in the communities. And because it is a cloud-based product, we see the number of users, and again, it varies by the day, but it's so between, I think it's typically around 15,000. It's, you know, between 10 and 20 on any given day, 1,000 of users in that. So quite a few people doing that. On the model, you know, I guess, as you said, I wasn't around initially for that, but I think that the only thing, there's actually no limits on the number of layers, for example, that you can do in CircuitMaker. So, so the only thing you might consider a limitation is the fact that your files, your design files, are stored in the cloud, and they're stored, you know, they're shared publicly, as opposed to them being on your hard drives and you have local access to those. That's really the only limitation that's there in terms of layers and things like that. And that, as I said, is really kind of it's kind of a philosophical thing that we're trying to support the idea that it is an open source movement, really, when we talk about makers and the people who we target CircuitMaker towards, and sharing is a part of it, collaborating is a part of it, and having content in the form of design files, components, etc., all of that, we think anyways that the idea there is for all of that to sort of be open, for all of that to be shared, and so, like I said, it's sort of a philosophy that we've built into that product, and we're always open to talking about that, but that's that's the philosophy behind it today.
Okay, I'm going to do a technical question, sort of. I posted this up in the open source hardware mailing list, and someone was really knowledgeable, and it was about the export format. So there's a standard format called IPC 2581, and Altium can export it. Is there plans to change what is exported and what's possible to import, so people can move files around between different tools or different versions or whatever?
Right. So today we support export of IPC 2581, and to be specific, I think there's now a second version of that standard. There's 2581A and 2581B. We support 2581A. We intend to support 2581B. I'm not sure that there would be a problem with that today, but I think we have testing to do and things like that to ensure. But we definitely support 2581A, and we'll support 2581B. Import is an interesting question. In fact, I saw that question posted here on your site beforehand, and I went down and asked one of the development leads about that, and he kind of said the same thing. Well, interesting question, that we should probably talk with some people who want to do that about precisely what they want to do in order to, or what they're trying to achieve by doing that. So we're open to it. We don't support it today, but definitely it's something that we're talking about and willing to talk about with users.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of requests too, and we always ask the same question, like, okay, what are you doing with that? Because sometimes there's requests for the sake of a request. Are people actually moving these files around? Would it really be useful to do import of that file type? Okay, so another question, this is on maybe where people could get information. So a lot of CAD software provides low cost or free licenses to startups. If a startup wanted to get a discounted startup license or some type of specific thing for startups, how would they go about it, or what are the price points that they should know about for the different flavors of Altium?
Sure. So you're probing my memory banks here to make sure that I get this right, and so there's a couple of things. So one is that I mentioned that we're implementing a program for startups, and actually through incubators, to make all of our software, including Altium Designer, available to people who are working within that incubator environment for free for a period of time. And I almost hate to be quoted on it. I think that period of time is something on the order of 6 months, but I could be wrong. It's definitely aligned with the period of time that you're working with that incubator, and then there's an opportunity to upgrade into a full license of that, to buy a license of that at a discounted price, and I know it's pretty heavily discounted. Likewise, anybody who's a qualified startup, and there's some guidelines surrounding what it means to be a qualified startup in terms of the amount of revenue and things like that. Those companies who qualify for that likewise get that same highly discounted price on Altium Designer. And I don't recall the details, but it's on the order of 40 to 50%, something like that. And likewise, you have the same. You still have access to CircuitMaker, of course. It's free all the time, and Circuit Studio. I don't know that the discount particularly applies to that, but anybody can go onto the Element 14 website today and buy Circuit Studio for $495. So that's pretty heavily discounted as it is, at this moment. So, but again, that program for startups, incubators, et cetera, is something that we're literally architecting now. So we're open to ideas, as you said, libraries, citywide things for maker spaces and so forth. Great ideas, definitely open to, to considering how we can best support the community.
Okay, and Ted, I'll promise you, if you send me all this information, we'll do an updated post. As you develop the program, we'll get the word out there. There's also tech shops. There could be some type of tech shop license because they have a membership fee. There could be something along those lines too. So, okay, last question. We got through these pretty quick.
The very last one?
Yeah, well, we'll ask you if there's things that we didn't ask you that we should ask you. So a long time ago, we came up with an Eagle badge. We worked with Eagle before they were acquired by Autodesk. And this is for people to give out to workshops and stuff like that. Would Altium consider letting Adafruit work with Altium and making an Altium badge?
100%. We'd be thrilled to do that. Yeah, I don't know. It's nice that Eagle, you immediately see what that is. I don't know exactly what an Altium is. You asked me that a little bit earlier offline, right? And I don't know what an Altium is. It's not an animal that I'm aware of. But we could definitely come up with something cool, and would be thrilled to do that.
It should be an Altium dragon. Dragons are cool.
We could maybe do a community project. We were watching Earth 2 and we saw an eagle fight. There was a eagle fighting a bigger eagle.
And
so
there's
who
these
knows?
Lizards.
Yeah, it could be all sorts of things.
Those are
Maybe that's
cool
a
animals.
community contest.
Marketing.
Exactly. All right, Ted. Well, that's it. Is there anything that you want to say or anything that we didn't ask you before? We thank you profusely for coming on this special edition of one of our live shows.
No, I want to thank you guys, because we don't often get a chance to talk to the makers community, and as I said, I think that we have what I believe is a real sort of like deep in our DNA is the idea of leveling the playing field for people, to give them access to the best technology that's possible, specifically in electronics design and so forth. So we really appreciate the opportunity to reach out and talk to people directly, and so thank you guys.
And with that, thank you so much, Ted. This video will be archived on our YouTube channel. You'll probably also see it on Altium. We'll get the tweets and the words out. And tomorrow is Show and Tell and Ask an Engineer, and we'll go over this and more.
Yep,
Ted,
tune in.
Thank you so much for answering every single question that came in, and listening to the community. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
No question was left unturned.
That's right.
Great.
We did a deep dive with an ocean engineer.
Into the Pacific.
Nice. Well done.
Okay. Bye, Ted.
Later.
Bye.